Well, I saw the first episode of DUNE Prophecy, which is, all about the Bene Gesserit, those mysterious, creepy, witchy, psychic nuns or something. Well, sisterhood, who are behind everything. They control things from behind the scenes. They're always somewhat of the puppet masters of the ruling class, because one of their members is always an advisor to the different rulers, even the emperor, and so on and so forth. And of course, that's all well established within the different iterations of Dune. I have never read the books, which puts me at a disadvantage, but I've seen the different versions of it. If I live long enough, I'll find time to delve in, but it's a lot of books, but anyway, there's some things here that right off the bat, especially now, that's probably gonna immediately turn people off. And of course, we just had 2 other shows that are about witches in space, witches and superheroes, and now back to space again. So of course, Star Wars had The Acolyte, where you had your lesbian witches. These women are all together and everything. They do marry them off here and there for the purposes of, spreading their influence and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't know if it's insinuated or not. It's only one episode that perhaps the main gal here had a relationship with her second or what have you. But there's really nothing there as of yet. So will they follow through with the same trope? They're lesbian witches, which, who's to say that a few didn't, get together and all this sort of thing. It probably happened. But the problem is, with this approach and ruling women who manipulate everything and have all the power, and for power is good for power's sake and whatnot. And a dark message, to be sure. And that appeared to be the case with Acolyte, albeit not as well done, rather foolish and clumsily done within the narratives of that. With Dune, this is very original. It is the Bene Gesserit have always been in that position. That's true to the source material, as well as I know it. But there's people who did know it, and they refer to it in discussing the films. So, of course, the David Lynch one, the TV series, and now the 2 films we've gotten in this latest version. And I don't even know. I guess this is to be considered connected to it, I would assume. It takes place thousands of years before, and where they're setting the groundwork for manipulating people into this religion. Now, the idea, of course, is that that the religion is all a vehicle for power and all that sort of stuff, and yet it who's ruling who here? And it's like, well, it's all the spice giving them their powers of foresight and all that sort of thing. But still, you ultimately, because that was one of the criticisms of David Lynch's Dune, saying, oh, well, he was actually positing Paul Atreides as an actual Messiah, when really it was supposed to be this manipulated thing, and all that. And yet it's very easy to just say, oh yeah, you thought you were in charge, that kind of thing. But anyway, you can apply that one way or the other throughout these approaches to Dune. So it looks good. The performances are fine. It takes off. It does give once again an introduction to the history and whatnot. And I can't help but think, boy, the really opening scenes would make for a much better story. And I've always been intrigued by the war against the machines, where they basically fought the Terminator War. The Terminator just won't do it. The closest you got was Terminator Salvation. Whereas you could have had this Dune series, which apparently there's a series of books on that goes into that story. That would be interesting, which is even further in the past. But so what? You got all this material. You could branch out into and becomes its own thing and what have you. But it touches more on it, and you see it. It give you a brief glimpse of that war that they had, and wow, that would have been a cool thing. Of course, I imagine a lot more expensive than having what looks to be, and this is true to the Dune story that they've at least presented on film. It's basically castle intrigue and that kind of thing. Which will unfold. And, once you got your set built and all that, you're pretty good. You can save money rather than having these ginormous battles and stuff like that. Which you'll probably get some of that throughout this, but for the most part, it's all about the secret whispers behind the scenes and manipulating people and that sort of thing. But that opening bit with the robots, I was like, oh, yeah, and then it was over. The only other time I've seen was, there were multiple cuts of David Lynch's version, and you saw the backstory laid out, which I actually appreciated because I was, very ignorant of the overall lore of Dune. And, but it was all, paintings and stuff like that. Whereas here, you see the machines fighting the soldiers and whatnot. But it sets up how the world of the Dune, the universe of the Dune stories begins, and what forms their power structures and whatnot, and certainly in this case of the Bene Gesserit. And I don't know how much of this is true to the actual lore, if there's been any gender swaps or race swaps or what have you, I don't know. But nevertheless, the story plays out, and for the most part, it's actually kind of boring as it goes. There's a few interesting things here and there, but the basic things that you could apply this in any display of ruling classes and their power and whatnot and their lusts, and because there's all these soap opera things happening here. And of course, it's a royal marriage takes place, despite the fact that one of them is a child who's unfortunately doesn't last long, as all a part of the manipulations going on, and probably already leading to what the Fremen are about and that sort of thing as well, because everything is going to be about the Arrakis, Dune, because that's where all the spice is, and of course ultimately the revelation eventually, which is thousands of years later, about what the giant worms signify and all that. But the cast is the casting of the main, and I'm already blanking on her name, but she's the main head sisterhood lady, the Mother Superior, if you will, and her younger self. You jump through time when she takes power through murder. I mean, supposedly, according to her, from what I could see from the original Mother Superior, she was intended to be the next leader, but if you say so. But nevertheless, the casting there with the young version and the older version is pretty good. They did a good job on that. But it's also another one of these shows, and you can take an exception for Dune, I would guess, is that this is still true to its original lore, and yet within this story, I see no heroes. These are all very dark and evil, I would say, people. I don't have a good vibe for this woman who's in charge of the Bene Gesserit and all that. I think she's very ruthless, and she flat out murdered this woman who was actually of the belief that they were supposed to stay true to what their original faith was, and this woman clearly does not respect that. But she felt that was also where their leader was taking them. But who was right and who was wrong? Well, ultimately, I'm thinking the one who got murdered was right. Because they go in, they pursue power for power's sake. They orchestrate everything. It's resulting in all kinds of misery and whatnot. And it's justified through, we have to be in charge. We have to have the power and that sort of thing. And that's about it. And that's the stuff of evil, in my humble opinion. Still, you can get a fascinating romp and yarn, and as this goes, and we'll see how that unfolds. But boy, I tell you, that machine war, that I'm thinking that's the one you should have gone for. But then again, it's probably expensive to do, and Warner Brothers is hurting for money these days. So, but in this era, and after 2 shows of these crazy covens, whether in space or in the comic book world or what have you, I don't know, but nevertheless, easily only in 1 episode, presentation wise, it beats those 2, which those 2 didn't really even try. I'll see what the next one does. I'm not sold on this, but I'm not figured, oh well, screw this is crap. I remain neutral for the most part on it, and I'll see how it unfolds as it goes.